Hey, Shalom, brothers and sisters. This is Amanda. I hope and pray that you all are doing well this evening. So I am back on for one more bonus episode, and it is by request. I had a brother and sister reach out to me today and said, would really love for you to share the other resource about marriage and family that you wanted to share. And I said, all right, I'll go ahead and do that. And I think it would be a great way to end the podcast ministry. So I didn't want to do it because I didn't want to sound repetitive. After all, I have 5 seasons. Each season has 20 to 22 episodes, and I just didn't want it to be repetitive. And even though it's the basis of the podcast ministry, I didn't want it to be repetitive. That, and technically I was supposed to end at the 100th episode, and I've done a few bonus episodes since then. So I just thought, let me just leave it be. But I just want to honor a request, and it's wonderful because it actually arrived today in the mail, and I was waiting for it because this was actually one of the first resources that I got to read and study early on about marriage and family, YHWH. And I had this copy and I lost it, and so I was able to reach out to the church, and they were able to send me another copy. So I was like, praise Yah. So I'm going to read this in this episode, and I should be able to share all of it within this one episode. It's literally only 24 pages long. It's not even really a book. It's like a pamphlet, if you will. So, but it has some really incredible knowledge, and it is very much in alignment with what Yah has revealed to me concerning marriage and family, His way. And I just want to share it. I just kind of want to just do like kind of like a recap, or, for those that maybe don't want to go through the whole podcast, this is just kind of like an all-in-one. I just pray that it blesses you and encourages you and gives you knowledge. Of course, as I always say, take everything back to Yah in prayer, and pray about these things. But yeah, it's really awesome. And it came from a church that I feel that a lot of how they interpret the scriptures and stuff is very much in alignment with how those of us that are Torah observant, in terms of in this area of marriage and family, how we understand the scriptures. So I am 100% in agreement with everything in this book. I believe everything in this book. I haven't read it in a while, but I'm very much in agreement with it. I believe that this is how it should be. And so, I'm going to share that with you all. And again, I pray that it blesses you and is a wonderful source of encouragement and understanding and, knowledge and wisdom. So now the title is probably a bit corny sounding because especially in these days, nobody really expects for anybody to have a happy marriage, which is really sad. But it's called You Can Build a Happy Marriage. And listen, it's true. And this is the way that I see it. I was just talking about this recently, and I've mentioned it a lot throughout the podcast ministry, that when we build our lives, whenever you build something, you build it on a foundation, right? So when you build something, you want a solid foundation, right? You don't want a foundation that is going to cause whatever structure you're building, right? Let's just put it that way, to eventually crumble because it had a weak foundation. So again, when we want to build our lives and our marriages and our families on a solid foundation, we need to do so on the foundation of Yahuah and His Word, okay? So when it says that you can build a happy marriage, I agree. If we're building on the foundation of Yah, if we are waiting for Yah and what He has for us, the plans He has, the marriage He has for us, the spouse He has for us, all of that, then yes, I believe we can have a happy marriage. Is it always going to be happy and blissful and things like that? No. Marriage and family, just like everything else, has its challenging seasons, and we will have hard times. It won't always be happiness, but it's a better outcome than, say, when we build on a faulty foundation or even come into a counterfeit lifestyle or something like that. Anything that's outside of, people have asked me, well, what's the definition of counterfeit? And for me, when it comes to these things, that definition is anything outside of Yahuwah's will for your life is counterfeit. It's not what He has for you. So with that being said, let me jump right in because I want to be able to read all 24 pages in this episode, which will be an hour. I hope y'all enjoy it. I hope it's a source of, again, encouragement, and I pray that it blesses you. And again, I agree with everything in this little book. I think it's wonderful and explains things very well. The pastor, which his name, I believe it's David C. Pack, I think he just explains everything really, really well, and I agree 100% with everything that he says. So, all right, let's go ahead and jump right in. And again, if you have any questions, you can always email me. All right. So, how many truly happy married couples do you know? And are you even sure of these? Is your marriage happy? Are you enjoying the life you anticipated? Statistics suggest the answer is probably no. Most married people are unhappy, with many a virtual study in misery. They have no idea what to do about it or where to turn for answers. Millions stumble along, bouncing off one marital problem into another, never knowing how to address them, let alone solve them. Married life has been the brunt of endless jokes, where traditional conduct and the roles of husbands and wives are ridiculed and switched and reversed, and depicted as a bondage that only a foolish person would enter into. Many equate marriage to surrendering their freedom to a lesser unhappy state of existence. Others choose to marry sincerely believing they will find perfect bliss. They will, quote unquote, live on love, only to discover that true happiness is far from automatic. Some even conclude, often within days, which is really sad, that marriage was the worst decision of their life. Sadly, so many enter marriage with no understanding, no preparation, no training, and no idea of how to achieve a lifetime of happiness with their chosen partner. Another thing too, another outcome that I want to add is, again, going back to the counterfeit relationships. When people enter counterfeit relationships, this is also going to be the outcome, sadly. Many couples spend far more time planning for a one-day wedding than for the lifelong marriage that will follow. As a result, over half of all marriages fail, ending in divorce, often with former partners becoming mortal enemies. Other couples are just as unhappy, but perhaps cannot afford a divorce or stay together only because of the children or other social or business reasons. How tragic and how completely unnecessary. So I've addressed all of these things as well within my podcast ministry throughout the 5 seasons, and it is. Sadly, I've seen people stay together just for the kids, and I'm like, that is like the worst thing you can do, because believe it or not, it's actually worse for them. Because think about it, you and this person fight all the time, it's toxic, it's this, it's that. Do you really think it's better, And again, like when he was saying about, people plan more for a wedding and drop all this money and things like that, and that was my whole point with that too, couples, by the time they get to their, quote unquote wedding day, they're so tired, they're stressed, like all the happiness and the excitement and the fun is just zapped out of them, and no couple should ever start their marriage off that way. The day that you come together and become husband and wife should be one of the happiest, blessed moments and days of your life. Not a tiring one, not a one of stress, not, you know what I mean? That's why when I did my episodes about this whole thing about, exaggerating with the weddings and the honeymoons and all this, it's crazy. Like, not only is it not commanded, like you won't find that anywhere in the Bible, but it's crazy to drop the amount of money that people do. I understand it's a special day, but wow, yeah, anyways, I've talked about all of that. Again, what I'm going to read and share is, I've talked about all this. That's why I wasn't going to do it, because I was like, I don't want to be repetitive. I've talked about all of this, I don't want to, but it's important. But yeah, I've shared all this as well. So, okay, moving on. The next section says, program to fail. Why have so few been able to find even a measure of the enjoyment they originally believed marriage would bring? Why have so many others decided to simply live together, avoiding commitment, thus artificially reducing the already skyrocketing number of divorces? Plus, we know that cohabiting like that is a sin in Yah's eyes, right? Why do so many openly admit that they do not trust their mate? Why do over 80% of marriages experience adultery? Why such rampant confusion about marriages and its purpose? What has brought the once sacred institution of marriage to such a deplorable state of affairs? This is no accident. The fact that marriage has been the subject of endless jokes is only the beginning of the story. Consider how marriage is routinely portrayed in the media. Reflect on the many television programs that countless millions of people have been watching for decades. So gone are the shows such as Ozzie and Harriet, the Nelsons, Leave It to Beaver, the Cleavers, the Waltons, Little House on the Prairie. Those are two of my favorite shows. I love the Waltons and Little House on the Prairie. And similar, more wholesome pictures of families from the 50s, 60s, and early 70s. In their place came All in the Family, Archie Bunker, Roseanne, The Simpsons, The Osbournes, Friends, Will and Grace, Everybody Loves Raymond, Married with Children, That 70s Show, Family Guy. Oh my gosh, Family Guy is such a horrible show. That is just such a horrible show. Keeping Up with the Kardashians, Modern Family, and others too numerous to mention. Books and movies have also extended and worsened this decline in every way. So fornication, cohabitation, adultery, homosexuality, and every other conceivable alternative lifestyle. I'm so sorry. I'm becoming tongue-tied. Alternative lifestyle, now including same-sex marriage, have been depicted thousands and thousands of times in the media. Invariably, such programs, movies, and books have described rampant immorality as exciting, fascinating, mysterious, and the virtual quote-unquote norm for what is now the great majority. And this is really sad because we know majority of this is an abomination at Yah. Their impact on marriage has been stunning. Marriage has become a laughingstock. Wholesome images of marriages, families, and role models of the past have almost disappeared. Sadly, many millions have copied this new modern role models, discarding traditional marriages and families as obsolete relics that history has properly scrapped. Recent generations have been conditioned to believe marriage is better the second time around. So then by this logic, the third marriage would be even better. Accompanying these trends has been a corresponding decline in traditional values and the importance of character all over the world. Under constant attack, standards of right and wrong, good and bad, old-fashioned, righteousness and unrighteousness have been blurring and crumbling. How many people any longer even speak of character once called virtue? With the steep decline in basic character has come an unwillingness to remain committed to vows exchanged on the wedding day. With the near disappearance of ethics, standards, fundamental reality, and basic knowledge of right and wrong, has come the assumption that when marriage difficulties arise, as they inevitably do with imperfect human beings, that couples should simply take the easy way out and divorce. I want to say something real quick before I move on to the next section where it says here that, recent generations have been conditioned to believe marriage is better the second time around. So, and this, of course, goes with those that have gone in Catholic relationships and stuff like that. Because my podcast has always talked about blending families, having grace, and being able to get married a second time. And this has to do with those that, yes, you made a mistake, you were in a counterfeit relationship, you've realized that, you have, come out of it, you have repented of the sins that took place within that relationship, you have turned back to Yah, you have realigned yourself with Him and His Word and His will for your life. And if Yah still has marriage in store for you, then that's where, the second time around would come in. Now, for some, it's not even a second time around. It's actually the first time actually getting married. For a lot of us, we just either cohabited or, you know what I mean? Like they weren't even technically quote unquote legally married, right? Which we're going to get to that in a moment, because I've had people ask me when I did the episodes about, are you married under Elohim or are you married under Babylon, which is the government, or are you married under a church? And I'll explain that more here in just a second. Okay, the author of marriage. Why do so few understand that there are great principles, spiritual laws, governing what most think is merely a civil agreement? Okay, so in other words, our world, our society, a long time, right, man-made tradition, they've turned marriage, which we know Yah created, right, it's Yah ordained, they take marriage and it's now under a civil law, right? So now, you either get married in a church or you go to the courthouse, you fill out a marriage license, you turn it into what? The government, right? So now your marriage is no longer under Yah, it's a legal process, it's under the government. That's not how Yah intended it to be. And that was the point that I was making in my episodes previously in the podcast. and they're called, Are You Married Under Elohim? I think there's 3 parts. Are you married under Elohim, or are you married under the government, right? Or churches of men, which, false doctrines, things like that. You don't want that to be a part of your marriage, okay? Marriage is not a civil agreement. It's not a civil law. At least it's not supposed to be. I know our society has made it that way, but it's not, okay? And you'll see here what the author goes on to say, and I'm in 100% agreement with it, and that's what I've been trying to explain all throughout my podcast. Marriage is from God and God alone. Marriage is from Yah and Yah alone. It's not a civil thing. It's not a court thing. It's not a government thing, and it never was meant to be that way, okay? Okay, so how many recognize that men and women have separate, different, Yah-ordained roles that must be understood for marriage to succeed? How many couples have been taught the real purpose of marriage? Most no longer even know the origin of marriage. There you go, right? Why? Because man took over, okay? So most people don't even know the origin of marriage. This is what my whole ministry is founded on. That's why my very first episode that I ever recorded and published was the differences between a godly marriage, or a set-apart marriage, a marriage from Yah, and a secular marriage, okay? That's why that was the very first episode I ever did. So, most people don't know the origin of marriage, let alone the vital answers to these and other important related questions. The answers to these questions are revealed knowledge that men cannot themselves discern, but Yahuah must reveal it. Elohim must reveal it, okay? That's why I say, when Yah has marriage as a part of his plans for your life, he's the one that reveals it. He's the one that ordains it and brings it together. I know some people are like, oh, that'll never happen. It does happen. I remember the day that Yah revealed to me my husband. I remember when I met my husband. Like, Yah literally presented me to my husband. It totally unexpected, totally crazy the way it happened. But yes, when we allow Yah to be sovereign and in control, in charge, yes, he does bring it together. When he has marriage for you, he is the author of it. He ordains it. Let him, I know it's going to sound corny, let him write your love story. Don't take it into your own hands. You know what I mean? He reveals it. If marriage is for you, he reveals it, right? So, in place of revealed truth, modern education has taught the great evolutionary lie that life is continually evolving to a higher state. Scoffers, preferring to believe that human beings are a product of blind, dumb luck, dismiss the Bible account that Yahuah supernaturally created 2 literal people, Adam and Eve, and then identified them as history's first married couple. Of course, those who believe the unproven fiction of evolution must also believe that, at some point, men devised the marriage institution. Believing otherwise is incompatible with evolution. One cannot have it both ways. Either Yah created marriage or men did. But human beings did not create marriage. We know this because it's in the scriptures. Man did not create marriage. Yah did. Okay? He goes on to say, therefore, apart from Elohim, they cannot know its true purpose. Of the keys to decades of happiness with the same person, it is not our purpose here to prove that Elohim exists or that the Bible is his inspired word. We have other books for that. Therefore, we start with the fact that the Almighty Elohim, who made the heavens and the earth, also designed and created marriage. Though marriage appears to be merely a physical union, starting with a wedding ceremony performed by a man, it is actually a divine institution created by Elohim. Listen, this is another reason why I said you don't have to go through all this trouble to have some man marry you, okay, and do the ceremony, whatever. The one that marries you is Yahuah. The one that marries you is Yahuah. It should not be a man. Again, it goes down to civil things again, right? And that's not how it should be. It's just not. It just, I don't know. It's a divine institution, therefore, it's a divine institution created by God, right? Created by Yah. Therefore, why would we go and have a man marry us? You see what I'm saying? Like, it just takes it away. It's like taking the credit. You know what I mean? Like, that's the best way that I can describe it. Okay. As the true author of marriage, Elohim understands what makes it succeed bringing supreme happiness and joy, or fail, ending in divorce and broken lives. This same Elohim clearly reveals this knowledge in His Word. For every effect, there is a cause. When a marriage experiences all the right effects, yielding happiness, it is because right causes have been understood and practiced. When a marriage is filled with problems of every sort, causing great unhappiness, right causes have either been unknown or ignored. Or you put it in the hands of men, right? What a way to start your marriage. You put it in the hands of men instead of leaving it in the hands of Yah. Okay. The Creator, Elohim, designed marriage to be a source of great happiness, right? Yah wants us to have happy marriages. Believe it or not, I know that seems impossible to many, because when we look around nowadays, all we see is broken marriages and broken homes. Well, we know why, right? But Yah wants us to have blessings and happiness in these things. They're gifts from Him, okay? So you can have an exciting, happy, successful, fruitful marriage, but only if you follow Yah's prescribed formula. By the way, for those of you who are new or just joining this podcast, when I say Elohim, that's Hebrew for God. When I say Yah or Yahuah, that is His name in Hebrew, okay? Okay, the author goes on to say, this booklet reveals the formula and the causes behind a happy marriage. It reveals the plain truth of how to build a wonderful, joyful marriage. We will examine basic principles unknown to all, but a very few who are willing to truly study and believe Yah's word to see what He instructs. Okay, next section. Yah's instructions from the beginning. The first biblical reference to marriage is in Genesis 2. It describes Adam and Eve being brought together by Elohim, forming the first marital union of a man and a woman in history. The account begins in verse 18. Notice, and Yahuah Elohim said, "It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helpmeet," or in Hebrew, fit or suitable for him. Elohim explains that men and women were not designed to be alone. People never work as well or not as productive when they are alone. Men were created and designed to need assistance, a help, another person to stand beside them. Of course, the woman is also aided by the man in a variety of ways. Studies show that the average person becomes happier after marriage. This increase has actually been measured, with these studies showing that no matter the person's prior level of happiness, it receives at least a small boost. And yet, society says, oh, if you get married, you're stupid for getting married. Now you're going to be in this trap, and now you're in bondage, and you're going to be miserable, right? That's how society puts it. Verses 19 and 20 describe Adam looking at all the animals Elohim had created and finding none suitable for him. So in verse 21, Elohim put him to sleep, took a rib from his side, and created the woman. And the rib which Yahuah Elohim had taken from man made, or in Hebrew, build, he a woman, and brought her unto man. Verse 22. Now notice verse 23. Adam realizes that the woman was literally a part of him, that she had come from him. I always love that. Every time I read these scriptures and when I talk about it, I just get goosebumps. It's incredible. You know, and that's what I was telling sisters, when those that are single, when you meet your husband for the first time, when you two literally meet for the first time, you both are going to have this knowing that you just can't explain, because your husband is going to recognize you because you are his rib. You are a part of him. And of course, figuratively speaking, right? Not literal, but this is how the first marriage came to be. Your husband is going to recognize you either that very moment or not too long after that. There's something familiar about you because you are a part of him. You're his rib. Praise Yah. And he's going to be familiar to you. You know, that's like the number one question people ask me all the time. Oh, how do I know that this is my spouse? You will know. The Holy Spirit is going to do like a, what's the word I'm looking for there? You're going to know by spirit. Men, you will know your wife by spirit. Women, you will know your husband by spirit. Why? Because you're a part of one another. Okay. Literally how the first marriage came together. Okay. So notice what Adam says. He says, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man." Here is Elohim's first recorded instruction about the marriage institution. Next, he tells Adam and Eve what to do once married. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. Verse 24 and 25. Married couples are to live together, forming a new household apart from their parents. The reference to, and they shall be one flesh, is a picture of sexual relations within marriage. The verse is explaining where sexual relations belong, within marriage, not outside of it. This account establishes marriage as Yah ordained. Praise Yah. This institution was created, designed, and presented to the first human couple, Adam and Eve, as the way that Elohim intended the two sexes to live together. Now notice this passage in Ecclesiastes. Solomon, the wisest man of all times, describing why the joining of two people is better than one alone. Two are better than one because they have a good reward for their labor. Chapter 4, verse 9. Verse 10 continues to explain the advantages of being married. For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him that is alone when he falls, for he has not another to help him up. Now notice verse 11. Again, if two lie together, then they have warmth. But how can one be warm alone? Verse 12 adds, and if one prevail against him, two shall withstand him. And a threefold cord is not easily broken. Notice the phrase, and a threefold cord is not easily broken. This establishes the minimum number to be a family. One child makes any couple threefold. To be a rope or a cord, a minimum of 3 strands is required, making it possible to weave them together. Each additional child further strengthens the marriage, makes the rope stronger, binds the family, making it harder for a couple to break apart. Elohim explains that producing a family is central to marriage. Adam and Eve had been told to be fruitful and multiply. That was one of the first mandates Yah gave in Genesis chapter 1, verse 28. Okay? All right. So, of course, we know that society says all the opposite of these things, right? All right. Next section is the husband's responsibility. So the most important New Testament passage about marriage and the specific role of husbands and wives is Ephesians chapter 5, verse 22 through 33. Now, if you've been following my podcast, you know that I taught from these verses quite a bit. This passage describes the most fundamental understanding each partner must bring to the marriage. Beginning in verse 25, Elohim describes, through Paul, instruction to the husband. Husbands, love your wives, even as the Messiah also loved the church. Messiah is Hebrew for Christ. And gave himself for it. This emphasizes the importance of husbands showing a real, sincere, deep love for their wives. The husband's first and greatest responsibility is to unfailingly love his wife. Initially, many husbands try to do this, but their effort wanes over time. Men often begin to take their wives for granted, not realizing they are to love them as the Messiah loved the church. This is the extremely high standard that Elohim sets, an unending, boundless love paralleling the way Messiah cares about his bride, the church. Messiah never gives up on the church, but rather forgives, understands, is patient with, tolerates, and works with his wife-to-be. The next several verses describe how Messiah works with the church, how a husband should treat his wife. This example culminates in verses 28 through 29 with this instruction. So ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loves his wife loves himself. For no man ever yet hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, even as Yahuah, the church. These are powerful words, especially the end of verse 29. They show an undying, never-ending, outgoing concern for the wife on the part of the husband. He is to love her as much as he loves himself. That is a tall order, but it is a reflection of the fact that the first woman, as a type of all women, literally came from a man, from his flesh. Praise Yah. I just love that. I just think that's so beautiful. I don't know. Call me a hopeless romantic or sensitive or whatever you want to call me, but I think it's beautiful. Okay. Verse 30 through and 31 speak directly of Genesis 2. Here Paul explains that his instruction about marriage derives directly from the passage we have already read. The New Testament supports the Old. In other words, what I've always said, it supports the Torah. Right? It all goes back to the Torah. Notice, for we are members of his body, of his flesh, and of his bones. For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall be joined unto his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. Now read verse 33. It summarizes the husband's role and introduces the most important aspect of the wife's role, what she must understand in the marriage. Nevertheless, let every one of you in particular so love his wife even as himself, and the wife see that she reverence, respect her husband. Okay, the wife's responsibility. What about wives? What is the most important aspect, responsibility, that Elohim requires her to perform in marriage? Let's now read the most crucial obligation for wives. Few married couples understand this great point. Notice verse 22. Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as unto Yahuah. Society has completely reversed and even denigrated what we are reading from the passages of the Bible. Yet this is what Elohim, as the author of marriage and what makes it work, requires of the woman. Excuse me. Most women are taught today that they are equal in authority to their husband. Certainly, women are equal before Elohim as human beings. Men are not more important or better than women, but Elohim places the man in charge of the marriage. This verse is plain. Again, this is something that I spoke a lot about in my marriage ministry, because many women hear the word submit and they're like, oh, I'm not going to be a slave and this, that. I have talked about this, so if you feel led, go back and listen to those episodes about submission and things like that. But society, once again, has taken it and just totally twisted it, it's not good. Okay, so the typical marriage counselor scorns this principle, seeing it is an archaic, I think that's the word. Sorry, I'm not familiar with that word. Out of date and out of step. Very few brides-to-be enter marriage having been taught anything about being subject to their husband's loving authority. Most would ridicule and outright reject this idea. Excuse me one moment while I take a drink of water. My throat is so dry, and that I've been in air conditioning all day. It is so hot where we are. Oh my gosh. Okay, I apologize for that. Okay, so most would ridicule and outright reject this idea. He says, some years ago I performed a wedding where almost none of the audience was familiar with Ephesians 5. During the ceremony, as this and related scriptures were read, the wife vowed to submit herself and be subject to her husband. We actually heard snickering from a number of the more sophisticated women in the audience. Afterwards, several approached the bride, kidding her and asking her if she really meant it or if it was just for the ceremony. Virtually all were hoping that she did not really mean what she said and that it was more formality. A couple of the women actually approached me about how novel and sweet it was that some women could still think this way. Of course, the implication in their voices was that it would certainly never be this way in their marriages. What was most astonishing was perhaps not that these women disagreed with wives submitting to their husbands, but rather that they viewed the exchange of solemn vows to Elohim's command as little more than a formality, a statement made for show. No wonder so many marriages do not last even 5 years. While all couples want to be happy, almost none follow Yah's formula for achieving it. Then they wonder why they are miserable or end in divorce. Okay, let's look at the parallel of Messiah and the church. Now notice the next two verses in Ephesians chapter 5. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Messiah is the head of the church. And he is the Savior of the body. Therefore, as the church is subject unto the Messiah, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything. Verse 23 and 24. This passage is also most clear. Not only is the husband the head of the wife, her leader, but, as with how the husband loves his wife, this also parallels the way that Messiah heads the church. Certainly the church is not equal in authority with Messiah. All who believe this verse must recognize that the woman is under her husband's authority. Elohim leaves no doubt that the husband is the leader, pace-setter, in the home. His example must stand out as a leader, not just as one who is quote-unquote in charge, throwing his weight around and saying, I'm the boss. Remember, he is to love his wife. His leadership as head of the home must reflect Yah's love. But the woman must submit herself to him, and no man can lead a woman who will not yield to his authority. I talked a lot about this too. I talked about, men not abusing their leadership and their headship, and women, like I said, it's a circle. A woman is not going to want to submit to a husband that doesn't love her and treat her right. And likewise, a husband is not going to love his wife unconditionally if the woman is not respecting him and submitting to him. It goes both ways. Remember, verse 24 revealed that the woman is subject unto her own husband as the church is subject unto the Messiah. This leaves no room for both partners being in charge. I just repeated that. Try telling the owner or CEO of a company that his employees should have an equal say in decisions, or a president or prime minister, that the citizenry should be able to overrule his government. Or a football coach, that his players should be able to take over the team whenever they see fit. In every organization, institution, company, football team, nation, military branch, or other entity, someone has to ultimately be in charge. The governments and organizations of this world all recognize this. No one would consider joining a football team where all the players were equal with the coach. That would bring chaos, and probably every game would end in defeat. Why then cannot millions of people recognize that marriage is no different? That the most basic unit of all societies, the family, must have a final decision maker. Someone must be in charge. As children appear in the family, they must know who is the leader and who is the assistant. In Genesis, Yah said that the woman was the help to the man. She was his assistant and was made suitable for him as an assistant, as a helper. Understand that this overall pattern for marriage must be accepted as Yah's blueprint, the fundamental starting point for a marriage to have any hope of success. Again, the marriage experts and even the ministers of this world disagree. The terrible fruits of their instruction, that men and women are equals, both in charge, prove that they do not know what they are talking about, because most do not examine Yah's word to see this pattern explained. Divorce is exploding in most of the countries and cultures of the world. Excuse me. Okay, today many men are unwilling to take the lead in marriage. Of course, many get married only to find that their wife has no intention of letting them be in charge. This is another problem. I also talked about this. Society has seen the near disappearance of strong leadership, with most men no longer knowing how to lead. This creates a crucial void in the marriage, and it frustrates women who were designed by Yah to most naturally follow the strong but loving lead of a wise man. Women were designed to need to know that their husbands love them and will provide for and take care of them. A woman should feel that, if necessary, her husband will defend her with his life. Okay, ladies, honestly, who else thinks that is the most romantic, even sexiest thing ever, to know that your man, your husband, would defend you at whatever cost, that they would protect you? That is just such an incredible feeling, right? And that's how it should be, So anyways, he references Ephesians 5:25. Understanding these things leaves a woman much more secure and comfortable in the role of a follower, right? So now we can trust our men because we know they're going to lead us, they're going to protect us, they're going to provide for us, and it makes it easier for us to submit, It's a little scary to submit to a husband that doesn't lead or lead well, doesn't protect, doesn't provide, you know what I mean? So that's how things just get out of order and get chaotic, So the woman married to a man who will not lead will spend her marriage frustrated, unable to know when to passively accept indecision or to speak up and take action, because her husband will not. Many women are forced to step into a leadership void in their homes because the man will not fill it, and somebody has to. Somebody has to take the lead whenever any two or more people do anything. On the other hand, some men view their role as a husband leading a wife like a drill sergeant leading raw recruits. So again, this was an episode I did about, men, don't abuse your leadership and your headship, right? So this is no better and is even in some ways worse than a marriage in which the man will not lead at all. For marriage to achieve the happiness and peace that Yahuah intends, both of these extremes must be avoided. Husbands should gently and lovingly lead their wives, drawing them out, asking their advice, and using it when appropriate. The wise husband knows that his wife is his best advisor, that she knows him best and knows how to compensate for his areas of weakness. In Colossians, Paul repeats in synopsis form the instruction to husbands and wives. As with Ephesians, the wife's responsibility is listed first. Notice, wives, submit yourself unto your husbands, as it is fit in Yahuah. Husbands, love your wives, and be not bitter against them. Chapter 3, verse 18 through 19. Okay, the reason the wife's role is given first is because family government must be established before anything productive can be accomplished. Again, the husband must lovingly lead the wife, and that is why Elohim inspires Paul to record this twice. But if the wife does not submit, the marriage will not last. All the love in the world from the husband will not keep a marriage together if the wife is determined to be in charge. How many times do we see in relationships and families today where the women quote unquote wear the pants, right? Like I said, the roles are reversed. Also, all the family quote unquote government in the world will not keep it together if the husband does not truly love his wife. No successful marriage can have either one without the other. Another vital point must be understood. Since obviously the wife must also love her husband, and this has not been stated directly, the husband must also periodically, this has been alluded to, be willing to yield to the wife's wiser position or view on any given matter. He must be humble enough to take her advice when her plan is better than his own. Incidentally, feeling more appreciated, understood, and valued, the woman's love for her husband will grow. Husbands, be wise enough and willing to seek your wife's counsel. Strive to train yourself to want her ideas. Remember, when combined, two partially good ideas can become either a good, very good, or even a wonderful idea. Your wife has much to offer, but you must be willing to receive it. Okay, the next section. I'm hoping I can read all of this in time. The weaker vessel. Being a leader sometimes means pointing out mistakes or weaknesses of those who follow you. Since this obviously includes wives, husbands should never do this unless they understand one of the basic differences between men and women. Notice how Yahuah instructs husbands to understand these differences. Likewise, you husbands, dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto your wife as unto the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 7. Did you notice the phrase, the weaker vessel? Wives are physically weaker and generally smaller than their husbands. Husbands must understand this, but this does not mean the woman is mentally or spiritually weaker than her husband. If a man needs to bring a point to his wife's attention, he must always be extremely gentle and kind in the way he presents it to her. He should strive to inspire and encourage his wife to do better. Remember, Colossians chapter 3, verse 19 instructed husbands to be not bitter against their wives. No one wants to be talked down to, demeaned, put down, or made the brunt of jokes. He must leave his wife her dignity, understanding she is as important before Elohim as he is. The harsh, bitter, verbally abusive husband who belittles his wife will answer to Yahuah for having taken his authority too far and misusing it. No husband doing this loves his wife as Messiah loves the church. Okay, wives, encourage your husbands. Just as husbands are to continually encourage their wives, so should wives do this with their husbands. Men need encouragement, sometimes lots of it. They need to be inspired to success by their wives and told that they can achieve and do more than they believe possible. Nothing means more to a husband than hearing that his wife believes in him, stands behind him, knows and is confident that he will accomplish what he has set out to do. He must hear your support on a regular basis. Wives, be sure that you do this gently, without driving, badgering, or nagging your husband to success. And be sure you want him to be successful for the right reasons, because it's good for him, the family, and the marriage, not just good for you. Of course, a man should encourage his wife for the exact same reasons. He should also want her to fulfill her potential. Partners in marriage should want each other to be all they can be, to see them grow beyond where they are, accomplish more, utilize their talents that Yah gifted them with, and bring in greater happiness to each other and the marriage as a whole. Wives, understand that your husband is under pressure on the job. It is not easy to go to work in this world. Obviously, some of you hold full-time jobs. If so, you may know the tremendous pressure and difficulty of the work-a-day world. This is a stressful age, perhaps the most stressful the world has ever seen. Encourage your husband if he is under strain. And husbands should obviously encourage their wives if they are under unusual pressure in the home. In either case, each partner should understand the other's point of view, what the other may be enduring, what his or her day was like, and trying to be reassuring, patient, tolerant of the mate's occasional discouragement. Always strive to lift each other up, reflecting to your spouse the big picture of where the marriage is going. Accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, and don't mess with Mr. In Between, as the old saying goes. This is not just a cliche, it truly works. If you work at practicing these things with each other, encouraging language means so much to people who are tired, discouraged, depressed, or frustrated. Okay, the next section. I don't know if I'll be able to finish all of this in time. There may be a part 2. Okay. The fine art of right communication. Miscommunication, bad communication, or lack of communication is one of the leading causes of divorce. The role of the husband is to try to take the lead in proper communication with his wife. Husbands must understand that the wife has often been home all day with the children. She may be frustrated and in desperate need of conversation with someone above the age of 5 or even 15. The husband who comes home from work not wanting to talk but rather just sit down, have a beer, read the paper, and watch the news has effectively cut his wife off from communication with another adult. Do not forget about her needs. Talk to her. Find out about her day. Show interest in what she has accomplished and what may have happened with the children. Sit down with her and allow her to open up about what was important in the last 8 to 12 hours of her life. I remember that my parents always stopped what they were doing in order to sit down and share what had happened in their day. My mother always immediately stopped whatever she was doing when my father got home so that he could tell her all about his travels. For many years, my father was a successful salesman. My mother wanted to hear about prospects he had pursued, but their discussions always ended with him showing interest in her day. My father always wanted to hear how things had gone with the children and whatever else had happened. They practiced this throughout my childhood. That is so sweet, and that is how it should be. Husbands, ask questions, bring things up, strive to always take the lead in communication, discuss the finances, discuss goals that have been set and possibly achieved, while always recognizing that your tone of voice is important. Women are very sensitive to tone of voice, whether it is harsh and superior or tender, understanding, and concern. The strong silent type may work in the movies, but it does not work well in marriage. The greatest single way to frustrate one another is to not communicate with each other. Invariably, this problem starts with the husband, but it may not end there. Wives, be sure that you open up to your husband. You may be by nature more verbal or less verbal than he is. Depending upon which is the case, strive to do a little more listening or a little more talking. The couple should strive to find a balance in communication, with each expressing an opinion about the things on their minds. Husbands and wives should both always remember to discuss their problems with each other, while relying on Elohim for ultimate spiritual understanding and guidance. All problems should always be discussed with Yah. Wives particularly should discuss their spiritual problems with their husbands, while never neglecting to remember that Elohim is the one ultimately guiding and helping them spiritually. Your husband cannot grant you salvation. It is actually a form of adultery to discuss intimate, even non-sexual problems with someone other than your mate. Wow. Okay, that just hit me. I didn't know that. You see? Holy Spirit's speaking to me. I did not know that. So wow, that's a huge one. Let me repeat that. It is actually a form of adultery to discuss intimate, even non-sexual problems with someone other than your spouse. Wow. Okay. This is a form of disloyalty, sharing outside the marriage things that are highly personal to the marriage. Okay, yeah, I have talked about that before. Proper communication within marriage means never airing dirty laundry or personal problems outside the marriage. Yet a wife must always feel as though she can also seek spiritual counsel from her minister, those who are true ministers of Elohim. Her husband has no authority to block her from doing this by requiring her to receive all spiritual counsel from him. He must recognize that he may not be qualified to guide her in certain areas of spiritual development. Share yourself with one another. Open up. It is a serious mistake to not communicate in marriage. This causes couples to grow distant from one another, feeling that they do not know what is on the mind of the other. Invariably, this leads to real distance, often followed by the ultimate distance between two partners, which would be divorce. How sad when two people who seemingly once could not find enough time to discuss all the things that were on each other's mind find themselves no longer interested in any kind of conversation. I've got 10 minutes left. Let's see if I can fit this. I might not be able to. I might have to do part 2, y'all. If I do, it's gonna probably be tomorrow because it's getting late. Okay, on a final note, avoid arguing at all costs. Nothing productive ever comes from heated exchanges. The devastating effect of this kind of communication lasts longer and bites deeper than the couple doing it even begins to realize. If you are wrong, always apologize. Defending the indefensible is silly and unproductive. Never store up your feelings and then dump them in a heated moment of release. Be sure that your conversation reflects what you would like to hear from your husband or wife. The golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, is also the greatest rule of communication within marriage. And also remember, never to let the sun go down on your anger. Always talk things out before you go to bed. Okay, so what do I have left? I have keepers at home. Little things mean a lot. Let's see here. A reflection of your husband. Manage your finances together. Yeah, these are all important. Okay, keepers at home. As mentioned, society has taught women that they can achieve greater success by more complete and fulfilled if they leave the home to enter the work world. They are taught to compete with men in the corporate arena. The problem with this is that Yah reveals that this is not a woman's natural role. Let's examine what he says is her natural role. I have talked about this a lot too in my podcast. And I know people will say, oh, we're living in a different world. Both people have to work, this and that. No. It's not the role for a woman. It's not the role for a wife or a mother. We need to trust in Yah and have faith, Okay, so notice Paul's instruction to younger women in the church, that they may teach the young women to be sober, to love their husbands, to love their children, to be discreet, chaste, keepers of the home, good, obedient to their own husbands, that the word of Yah be not blasphemed. Titus chapter 2, 4, and 5. This is a powerful passage containing many helpful points for young women in particular and all women in general. Read each phrase carefully and notice how older women, verse 3, are to teach younger women these things. These are rarely done anymore because most younger women now have no interest in being taught anything, let alone old values by quote-unquote old ladies, right? Plus, how can you teach it yourself if you yourself are outside of the home all the time, right? So this verse teaches that wives should love their husbands and children. This is more obvious. But verse 5 explains that they are also to be keepers of the home, as well as good and obedient to their own husbands. This is so vital to recognize that Elohim ties it directly to that the word of Elohim be not blasphemed. So women, if you're wives and mothers, you're actually blaspheming the word of Yah by going out and pursuing a career and putting that career first. Now you're neglecting your home. And again, I've talked about this so much in my podcast. I have episodes devoted to this. Oh, that's old fashioned. Oh, we can't get by. We have to have 2 incomes, this and that, and the next thing. And it's like, okay, 1, where's your faith? 2, as you can see here, it's literally in the scriptures, right? Wives were designed to be keepers of the home. They should take care of the needs there, recognizing that men do not naturally think in this way. It's true. Swap roles. Have a man stay home for a few months and take care of the home, take care of the kids, plan the meals, cook the meals, do all the... It's out of their element. They're capable of doing it the same way women are capable of going out and getting a job and doing it. But it's not the roles we were designed to have, okay? Like I said, it just... When women go out and work like this and neglect the home, it just puts everything in chaos. I have asked countless of men, would you rather stay home and care for the home and the kids, or would you rather go out and work? 95% of them said, I'd rather go out and work. When I've asked women, same thing, but a little bit less because a lot of women have become independent. 80% of women have said, I'd rather stay home. I feel like that's my place there, than go out and have a job, right? Think about it. The house gets neglected, the kids get neglected. I mean, I can go on and on about that. Okay, so... women were engineered to think of the little needs that make a home friendly, warm and special to all who share it with her. Men are not able to do this even remotely as well as women. Wives, take time to think about how you can improve the environment in which you live, in which your children are growing up to become adults and parents themselves. Excuse me. What special things can you do, depending upon the budget you have to work with? Do you sell short how much you can do if you are industrious, creative, and determined? In this same regard, wives should try to fulfill the little needs in their marriage that are going unfulfilled. Remember that 2 are better than 1, and the woman is an assistant to her husband. Yahuah knows that no man is complete without an effective assistant looking to all the little needs which he was not created to notice. I've always said this, men, and I'm saying this with all due respect, men compartmentalize everything. Men do things one at a time. That's the way they think. Women can multitask better than men. Okay? And I truly believe wholeheartedly that's how Yah designed women and men. Women can multitask. Men just kind of compartmentalize everything, you know? Okay. He goes on to say, I've counseled hundreds of marriages and rarely have I seen men recognize the home's less obvious needs as well as does the wife and mother. The astute husband recognizes this. He understands and accepts that he was not created and not designed to see what is less obvious. The wise wife and mother recognizes that she was, and that it is her responsibility to fulfill these little needs in the marriage. She takes care of the issues and concerns that would otherwise never be addressed. All right, so I only have 5 minutes left. So it looks like I'm going to be able to read this last part here, and then I'll have to pick up in a part 2 with a reflection of your husband. God, I was doing good. I got to page 18. Okay, little things mean a lot. Let's return to the husbands. Recognize that little acknowledgments are far more important to your wife than you may believe, or than you may have been taught to understand while growing up. Women like to be recognized for what they do. There's an old cliche, if you like it, say so. Husbands, this means you. If your wife has cooked something special, thank her. If she bought a new dress and it looks particularly good, compliment her. Even finding something good to say if you do not especially like the dress. If she is wearing a new perfume, tell her if you like it. If she has moved the furniture around, as women often enjoy doing, yes, I move my house around all the time, appreciate it. If she has baked a special dessert, comment on it, notice it. No matter how small an item may be to you, it may be very important to your wife that you notice and validate what she has done. Right? Because she's keeping your home and she's caring for your children, you know? Let her know. Do not ever underestimate the importance of how little things mean a lot. Recognize the important contributions of the person you are married to. So many husbands are too focused on themselves, not caring about all the little things their wives quietly do for them. If your wife is handling many necessary details for you, recognize that it is extremely important to her that you appreciate with just a few seconds of compliment what may have taken her hours or days to achieve. Look for what she has done, perhaps bringing home a gift reflecting your appreciation. Recognize that a single rose or a card or both is a wonderful way to let her know that what she did was noticed and that you appreciate it, and she will love you for it. Also recognize that your children, if they see this kind of outgoing concern and interest, will see that their father loves and appreciates their mother. This will give such children confidence and peace that they are in a happy, loving home, led by parents who care about each other and therefore care about them. Also, you are quietly programming this into their future marriages and indirectly helping your grandchildren. Aww. I cannot overstate the importance of husbands setting this kind of tone within the family. All right, brothers, sisters, so I have to stop there. The next sections will be a reflection of your husband, manage your finances together, a proper understanding of sex, which I just did like 3 episodes on that, practicing forgiveness, planning a family, and the truly happy marriage. So that part 2 will come tomorrow. I am exhausted. It's been a long, hot day, and I am ready to turn in for the night. So that's it for part 1. Plus, I'm going to give you all a chance to listen to this first. I don't know what it is about my followers that listen to these episodes out of order. And you don't want to miss this. You want to listen to this first, and then the next one, you want to get all of it together. So I'll give it maybe a day or 2 to let everybody listen to this first, and then I'll come out with part 2. So that way, you know, people who wanted to listen to this first. So maybe I might not release it tomorrow. Maybe it'll be the day after. But there will definitely be a part 2 coming to finish off the rest of the sections in the book. I hope and pray that so far this book, this resource has been a blessing for you. Any questions, please don't be shy. Feel free to email me. I love you all so much. I pray you all have a blessed evening, and I will talk with you in the next episode. Shalom.